This is a demonstration of the cross-reference church management system. It is designed to handle information within your ministry easily and powerfully. The ease of the system is based on its organization of data, enabling you to view relationships between the different parts of your church. Let's take a look. The first thing is to look over here on the left. And here we will see that cross-reference is arranged into groups. And you will see the different types of groups here, and we will give explanations of what those groups are. The second part is the list of names of people that belong to those groups. When you select a group, the records of names are listed here. You can see the total number of records up here. And if you select any name, it will immediately populate with the information here. Let's take a look at some of the groups that are here so we could see how they relate to a church and the functions that it performs. The first section are church services. You can add individual church services. If you select the main node in there, then you can see you can add individual church services. You all only have to put the name of the service and the date of when it occurs. Each church service has groups underneath that. It has the people who have attended and are therefore involved in what the church is doing, and then those who have received Christ. And then you can see you can add as many church services as you wish. The next section are Bible studies. Bible studies can be selected and added when you click on the Bible studies section. And you can see here you can add a Bible study. Bible studies have more information to them. You have the name, location of the study, description, the type of study could be male, female, or married couples, the time of the study, when it happens, its duration, and of course, when the registration closes. The registration close time is very important, and the reason why we have so much information here is because Bible studies are the kinds of things that appear on the website of cross-reference, which we will see shortly in the future when we take a look at the website of how cross-reference works. But on the website, users can look at the Bible studies that are being offered currently, and they can select going to one of those Bible studies and enter themselves into that Bible study. The registration close date tells the system when to take that Bible study off of the listing. When you look into a Bible study, you could see that it is divided up between those who are actually involved in the Bible study and those who have not attended. This is something that's useful for Bible study leaders because Bible study leaders have people they're reaching out to and asking to come into the Bible study. And of course, they have people who have actually come to the Bible study. In addition, you have leaders here in the Bible study. Now, of course, this may be something that is very useful to look at in terms of how this hierarchy works and how it helps you and what you're trying to do in managing a church. When I click over here in the leaders, we have one leader here, Benedict Sama. Of course, being a leader of a Bible study also means that you were involved. And you can see as you go up the hierarchy here to Bible study involved, that same person, Benedict Sama, is also there. He is also, if you click on men's study, Bible study, it shows the contacts, both those involved and those who are not attended. And of course, Benedict Sama still appears there. And of course, if you click on the Bible study section, you will see that the list of everyone who attends any Bible study or is a contact of Bible studies anywhere, and you see that Benedict Sama is in that group as well. So by putting Benedict Sama as a leader in that Bible study, you gain a lot of information about him. Another thing that cross-reference has is the idea of families. When you click on families, you'll see the family group there, and you just give the name of the family. In the family group, you have a head and members of the family. Now, you may have a single head of family, or you may have multiple heads of the family. The important thing to look at in terms of what the head of a family is that on the website of it, people who have logged in and who are heads of families can add their children to that family group. And that allows us to keep track of children as they are connected to actual families. The next thing we look at is outreaches. And when you select outreaches, you're able to add one. And it usually has a name, location of outreach, and the date of the outreach. By the way, if you actually mouse over a particular group, you will see its information appear briefly there. And that gives you information at a glance. That tells you information about that particular group and the information contained in it. When we go over here inside the actual group, you could see several subgroups here. And we have leaders, those who have attended the outreach. These are members of the church who have gone and been part of the outreach. Those who have been spoken to, those who have heard the gospel. And of course, underneath this, those who have received Christ. And then if we go over here to courses, these are the classes, of course, that you take within a church. In our example here, we have an inductive Bible study methods course. Now, a course may be something that happens one time, or it may happen over and over. In this case, we have the example of an inductive Bible study methods course that is done over and over again, and there are several individual classes. Now, of course, classes are something that you can sign up for online, so there's extra information for classes. So if you click on the adding the class, you could see that there's a name of a class, an instructor name, an instructor email, location of class description, and you have the day of the class, the start time, length, when the class starts, and when the registration closes. Again, after the date of the registration close, that class no longer appears in the list of classes. And in this way, you can have a single course of study that has a lot of individual classes. In this case, there's one in the summer, and then there's two during the winter. So it keeps that very well organized. And when you go within an actual class, it is subdivided between people who have passed, people who have attended, and those who have signed up. And if you wish to keep information on people who have failed the class, although that is usually not the case within a church class. But if you want to keep that kind of information, you can. One important aspect of churches is discipleship. Not every church does discipleship in a formal way, but many churches are very interested in doing discipleship. So, an important thing to understand about discipleship is the aspect and the idea of spiritual multiplication. And that idea is that when somebody disciples somebody else, they're discipling that person to become a discipler of another who becomes, and then that disciple becomes a discipler of another, and so on and so on. This idea is what creates a multiplication effect where people grow and grow and grow in their discipleship while simultaneously expanding the number of people who are disciples and who can engage in discipleship and being a mentor for somebody else. So it's very helpful then if you can model this within the system. And this is where we model this in actually the hierarchy of cross reference. Now, cross reference is something that, of course, is very much connected to hierarchies. Now, we have a couple examples here. This is Eliza, and she has, of course, had a lot of disciples here. And these are the list of the disciples that are involved with Eliza. And we place Eliza into the discipler subgroup here. And what that does is that allows Eliza to have control and to add and remove people from her list of disciples. And then, of course, we have Ahmed. And Ahmed over here has a much deeper tree. And so, if we take a look over here with the discipleship involved, Ahmed has a large group here, but it's not really the people that Ahmed are discipling. In fact, Arthur Farrow and Alex Loder are the ones who are discipled by Ahmed. And then when we drill down over here, that's when we begin to see that each of these disciples of Ahmed has an actual uh, list of disciples themselves. So Arthur, of course, has his disciples, Lawrence and Jeffrey, but they have disciples as well. And so you can drill down in here, and you can see Lawrence has Matthew, and Jeffrey has Mike Smith. Now, a question that you may have here is, well, it looks like when you click on Ahmed, it lists everybody all the way down the tree. And indeed, that is the case here. However, what you want to do sometimes is you just want to know who are the disciples of Ahmed. And in that case, you can actually select Ahmed's group, and then you can subtract the people that are, and this gets into group arithmetic here, which is a one way of querying information here. So we can select Ahmed, and we could say, okay, I want Ahmed's disciples. So that means that I'm going to select Ahmed himself, and I'm going to remove the disciples of his disciples. So I'm going to remove Arthur's disciples, and I'm going to remove Alex's disciples. And that's where we can see, of course, Ahmed's group here. Now you may go, oh, okay, well, I don't want Ahmed in there. I just want his disciples. You could also remove Ahmed, who's the discipler, from this group. So it's actually very easy to get additional information there. But what we want to know is how successful um, is a particular group of disciples. And in this case, we see Eliza. Eliza goes only one group deep. She has a lot of disciples. Ahmed has actually more disciples, but individually he has only two people that he is discipling. And what we're seeing here is that Ahmed has spiritual multiplication going, and he has first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation disciples, whereas Eliza only has her first generation disciples. And in this way, we can see um, how things are going. It's a tool which allows you to analyze and understand how discipleship is going within the church body. Of course, every church wants to keep knowledge of who are members and who are not, and that is included here. There's a place for keeping a list of elders and deacons, and of course, for staff, which is divided into pastoral staff as well and the head pastor. And finally, there's a couple of more groups here: volunteers and youth groups. Now, when you go into youth groups, you see a little bit of a mirroring as to what happens with the church in general. And that's because youth groups are oftentimes similar to churches. So in this case, you have church services for the youth group, you have its Bible studies, and you have its outreaches. And all of these work exactly the same as they do in the other groups within the church. And so you have that mirroring effect, but yet it's kept secret for the youth groups. And you have youth staff involved in volunteers as well. The next part we want to look at is summaries. Now, to really understand summaries, we need to take a look at an example. And for that, we're going to go over to Bible studies. When we go into Bible studies, they are separated between those who are involved and those who have not attended. Now, if I want a comprehensive list of the people who have come to Bible studies, the people who have attended, I will have a bit of a problem here because when I select Bible studies, it includes people who are not attended along with people who are involved. And the only way to include people who are involved only is I'd have to select and combine every Bible study together and select the people that are involved. And that can become a little bit difficult. What we want to have is something that is simply going to select only the people who are involved in Bible studies and not the people who have not attended. And so when you go into the summaries, that's where you begin to see some very, very convenient things. And so if I select this, it will show all the people who are involved in Bible studies. This is not the list of people who have not attended. Now, an important thing to note here is this is not a group. A summary is not a group. It behaves a little bit like a group, but you cannot add people to it or remove people to these groups directly. Rather, they are calculated by what's actually going on in the Bible studies. And another group that you may be interested in here, and this one really does stick out, and is one you would use a lot. It is all involved. Now, at first glance, this may look like a little bit of magic, but what you're actually seeing is that this is the combination of everyone who is involved in every way. When I go over to the Bible studies, for example, there are people who are involved and those who are not. And it's marked with this word, involved. If I go to a church service, there are people, the people who have attended are involved. If I go over to outreaches, those who are leaders and those who have attended are all people who are involved. Interestingly enough, those who have heard the gospel or have been spoken to, well, those are not necessarily part of the church. They may become part of the church, but by virtue of being outreach to, that doesn't necessarily make them involved. People who have taken a course, however, regardless, pass, fail, regardless of the outcome of the course, these people are involved. Your disciples, of course, are involved. Members are involved. And so you can see all the different ways that people are involved. And when you select all involved, it brings a list of everything combined together. That is, people who are connected with the church in a substantial way, in a way in which that it makes sense. Now, another one we have here is all involved in 3 or more services. This would be a way to figure out those who are involved by coming to services with some degree of frequency. Um, and then we want to see, okay, well, what about people who are involved in discipleship? And that is another summary that is involved, that is here. And we have people who are involved in classes, and we have all classes passed, everyone that has attended a class, and so on. An interesting one here is what we have for disciples. If we want to see disciples from first generation on down, so it's first, second, third, fourth, all the way down, you select first generation disciples. If we want to see people who are second generation disciples, you select that, and third and fourth, of course. Now, an interesting thing is like if we want to see, okay, well, who are the people that are really the people who kicked off our discipleship program? I just want to see our first generation disciples. then you would click on first generation disciples. And just like with discipleship before, you would subtract the lower levels, second generation disciples. And of course, this isn't really very surprising here. Ahmed and Eliza are the ones that started off our discipleship. One important thing that every ministry wants to know is, who are your leaders? And in this case, you have a summary that will tell you all the leaders. And another thing that ministries do want to know is, how many people receive Christ over the year. And there are many different ways that people can receive Christ. They can receive Christ within a service. They can receive Christ through an outreach. It could be a youth group service. It could be a youth group outreach. All of those combined together, and you click on this, and you see everyone who has received Christ. So these are a very important tool for understanding your ministry, understanding how it works, and what is working well and what isn't. One of the things that we can show here is the way that groups actually affect summaries. And our example here, we're going to show um, what it's like to add a class. And we're going to show a new concept here called divisions. It's a way of dividing up some of the summaries that you have, and it does apply to some things. In this case, it applies to classes and courses. So for example here, we will add a course here, and we're going to add a membership class. So now we have the membership course, and we're going to add a class. Now I'm going to put just a little bit of information here, and I really should put the membership class in here as the name, and then Dr. George will be the instructor, and I'll put general email here, and I'm going to say room 105. Now, important thing here when you're adding a class, as mentioned before, is that this is information that shows up when people are searching for classes within the web portion of cross-reference. So you would want to put a description here that it would be something that would attract people to the class. But in this case, all we're going to do here is just say, you know, great class in here. We'll have it on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock p.m. And we'll make it a 2-hour class. We're going to start the class on October 1st, 2023. And registration will close sometime before that. And we'll make that September 15th, 2023. All right. So in the membership class, what we're going to do is we're going to add a number of people who have signed up. Now, in most cases, people will sign up on paper if you put out a sign up sheet somewhere, in which case you would add them from the system, or they would sign up online, in which case they would be added automatically. In our particular case, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a block of, um, I don't know how many, about a little less than 10 people, and we're going to add them. And we're going to just do it by dragging and dropping into the signed up area. Now that we have all these people in the signed up area, and by the way, you can see how easy it is to add people to a class. And so now let's take the course on a little bit further down and say, okay, well, what I want to do now is I want to have people who have attended, and let's say all but one attended. And let's go ahead. Alex did not attend. And we'll go ahead and grab that and put that into attended. And then out of those who have attended, why don't we say that all have passed? So now we have a fully set class for our membership course. And you can, of course, have many membership classes there. Now, let's say we look at that and say, okay, well, we do have many membership classes throughout the year. And obviously, the name membership doesn't really say it. We should have a spring one and a fall one. Now, we won't add a fall one here, but what we're going to do is we're going to change the name. We're going to change the name to spring class. Now that we have added this course in this class, let's take a look at how that affects the summaries. And so when we go into the summaries, you can see a few things here. All classes passed, all classes attended. But it may be very useful to see not just everyone who passed all classes, but maybe see everyone who passed a certain course. And you could see here now membership is here and inductive Bible study methods is also here. So we see our two course names there. And you can see the course names up here. And of course, inductive Bible studies, there are several class sections, all of them with people who have passed. So it's very useful then to be able to select an actual church course and to be able to see everyone who has passed inductive Bible study methods. And we can, of course, do that with membership as well. But since there's only one class in the membership course right now, it just makes sense to click on the past for the single course, for the single class. However, when you have multiple classes, then all of a sudden these summaries and their divisions become very, very useful. Now let's take a look at one of the most powerful features in cross-reference, and that is the feature of group arithmetic. And it's something that you can use to query information very quickly and very powerfully. Let me give you an example here. So if I wanted to add everyone who is in the church services together to everybody that has is connected to Bible studies, well, I would select church services, click on the add, and then Bible studies. And now you have a merging of the two sets of records in those two different places. As we've done before, we can subtract one set of records from another. For example, the people who have gone to outreaches, who are connected to outreaches, but have never been to a church service, you would select outreaches minus church services. And then the other one is a cross reference. And this is the group of people that is in common between the two lists. For example, if I wanted to know everyone that went to a church service and is also involved in Bible studies, then I would select church services, cross reference, Bible studies. So these 13 people have been to both. So you can chain these kinds of queries together. And so let's give an example of this. It is important for a church to figure out who's a member and who is not. And the most important thing to do, the easiest thing to do, is to keep a positive list of people who are actual members. And then you can figure out, well, who is not a member. And so instead of keeping a separate list in non members, we can actually use this kind of group arithmetic to find out the information we want to know. So, in order to find out who is actually a member and who is not, what we can do is select all. That is all the records, of course. And we would then subtract the people who are actually members. And so now we would get a list of people who are not members. Okay, so far so good. But not everyone in this list is someone who has come to the church. Some people are actually contacts. So maybe we should be more specific in how we do this. Maybe we should select people who have had some kind of connection to the church. So we can select church services, and then we can add to it all involved in Bible studies. And then we can select all involved in classes. And then we can add all who are involved in discipleship. And then now we have a group of people who actually come to the church. And then we can subtract members. And now that is a much more descriptive list. An even easier way to do this is simply to select all involved. This is a list of everyone who's involved in every way. And then we would select members. And this is actually a more precise list. Another example that we can use is to take a look and say, okay, well, are people coming to the Bible studies outside of the services? That is, every church advertises their Bible studies from the church services. And of course, one may assume that people are coming to the Bible studies through the actual church services. But maybe that isn't the case. And that might be something that's actually important to know. Maybe there is a lot of people that are being personally invited from outside the church to come into the Bible studies. Well, is that true with this particular church? So what we can do here is we will select all involved in Bible studies, and then we will subtract everyone who's involved in church services. And it turns out we have 23 records here. And that's a pretty significant list. What that tells us is that in this particular church, we have a significant number of people who have come to the Bible studies and have never gone to a service. That means that word of mouth is getting people to the Bible studies. And let's take a look at a third example, and we'll see another aspect of using this to query information. What if we wanted to know everyone who within this church that is part of coastal California, coastal Southern California, I should say. And those are, of course, 4 area codes. There may be more, but those are the ones off the top of my head: 562, 619, 714, and 760. So we'll take all the records and we're going to click the filter button. And we're going to get everyone whose phone number starts with 562. So far, so good. Now let's add the people from 619 area code. So we click add and then the filter and then phone starts with 619. And then let's add the 714 area code. Add, filter, phone starts with 714. And then, of course, let's not forget San Diego. We will add a filter. Phone starts with 760. And there we have a list, 9 records of people in coastal Southern California. Of course, this isn't necessarily what would happen in a church normally, because of course churches work with their local bodies. But this gives you an idea of how you can search using the filter capabilities in here. If you, for example, kept gender as an item in here, you can select for males, you could select for females, and so on, and be able to get some really good information. So when you have a list of records, of course, you have things you want to do with those records. So we're going to take the example here of trying to find a group of people who are potential leaders. And we're going to first have a criteria here of people who are involved in different ways. And we want to make sure that these people are people who have actually passed the membership course and who are not already leaders. So let's do this. We'll start out with all involved in Bible studies. We'll add to that all involved in discipleship. And then we'll use cross reference here to make sure that it's only the people who have passed the membership course. Now, of course, we're left with only 2 records here. Now we want to make sure we subtract the staff. And we want to make sure we subtract any elders and any deacons. And then we want to subtract everyone who is already a leader. So now we have a list of 2 people. And then what we can do here now is we can actually export this to CSV. And this is something that is possible with cross-reference. You can export it as a CSV file. Now, the use for exporting something to a CSV file is that it can be imported into other systems. A good example might be Evite. Maybe you want to send out an Evite to people to come to a particular event. So you can export to CSV and then import those same records into Evite and send out a nice invitation. Another thing you can do is you could save this group to a different group. So we've now calculated this, but we want to keep it. So we're going to make a new group. We're going to put it underneath all. And we're going to call it Leadership Prospects. And we'll click OK. And now we have the group here that is up on top. Now, another thing we can do is we can actually send an email through cross-reference. Now, it could be a list of 2 people. It could be a list of 100 people. And you could do the email through a simple editor that allows for you to change various formatting things in here. But in this case, we're just going to do a hello, and we're going to add a first name and just say, how are you? Now I'm going to show you a preview to show you what it's like when the email is sent. It will do a mail merge with the first record, and then we'll introduce something called stationery. Now, of course, you can see a few things here with the stationery. It added a header up top, so you can actually have a personally designed stationery that puts some nice looks to your email. It could set the font. It could set all kinds of things. In this particular example, the stationery, of course, makes this paper-like look to it of a certain width, adds the header over here. And one important thing that stationery does is it adds an unsubscribe link at the bottom. And this is something that is actually important if you send out emails to many people. If you don't have an unsubscribe link, you can oftentimes run afoul of many email services because they want you to use an unsubscribe link, and it's a requirement on there. So you can see you could put all kinds of content in here, and it will have an actual email. So I hope this demonstration has been something that has helped you get an understanding of what cross-reference can do. It is by no means a comprehensive list of all the capabilities of cross-reference, but we can get at least a general overview of how cross-reference works and some of the more powerful features here in this software. And you can keep things very, very organized with cross-reference and do quite a bit um, simply by working with a hierarchy, working with summaries, and working with the group querying arithmetic operations on there. And so I hope cross reference will be something that would be helpful to you.